The luminary believed they were the only beings in the galaxy who possessed true souls. When they looked at each other, they saw light, beautiful, radiant energy that glowed from within. This inner light was proof of the soul, they said. It was what made someone real, what made them matter. Humans had no such light. When the luminary discovered Earth 50 years ago, they studied humans carefully. They used their most advanced instruments. They examined human bodies and human minds. They found intelligence, yes. They found emotions and memories. But they found no inner light, no radiant soul energy, nothing that proved humans were more than clever animals. The Galactic Covenant, the great civilization of the luminary, made their decision. Humans could enter their space, but only as workers. They were classified as hollow vessels, living things without true souls. They could serve, but never as equals. Kale had lived with this reality for most of his adult life. He was 28 now, and for the past 3 years, he had worked as a maintenance technician on the estate of High Arbiter Zeltis. The estate was beautiful. Towers of crystal that caught the light of 3 suns, gardens filled with flowers that bloomed in colors humans had no names for. Kyle maintained the environmental systems, repaired the automated systems, and kept everything running smoothly. The luminary who lived there rarely noticed him. To them, he was like a piece of furniture that occasionally moved. They walked past him without acknowledgement. They discussed important matters in his presence as if he could not understand. When they needed to give him instructions, they left digital messages rather than speaking directly. Kyle had learned not to mind. This was simply how things were. He shared quarters with 5 other human workers in a simple building at the edge of the estate. They cooked meals together, played card games in the evening, and told each other stories about Earth, a planet most of them barely remembered. It was not a terrible life. The luminary paid fair wages, provided adequate food and shelter, and never treated them with deliberate cruelty. They were simply invisible. On the morning that everything changed, Kale was performing routine maintenance on the environmental controls in the residential wing. He carried his tool case through the elegant hallways, checking each room systematically. Most of the family's private chambers were empty during the day. The luminari spent their time in meditation gardens or conducting covenant business. But when Kale reached the chamber at the end of the east wing, he found it occupied. A young luminari lay on a floating rest platform. Her light was dim, far dimmer than any luminari Kyle had ever seen. Instead of the usual brilliant radiance, her form flickered weakly, like a candle struggling against the wind. Dark fractures ran through her energy body like cracks in broken glass. Kale froze in the doorway. He should not be here. He should leave immediately. But the young luminari had seen him. Her eyes, regions of concentrated light within her form, widened with fear. "Please don't hurt me," she whispered. Her voice was weak, trembling. Kale was so surprised he nearly dropped his tool case. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just here to check the environmental systems. I didn't know anyone was in here." "You're human," she said, as if that explained everything. "Yes." Kyle stayed in the doorway, not moving closer. He knew the luminari taught their children that humans were dangerous. Soulless creatures could not be trusted, they said. Without inner light to guide them, humans were unpredictable and potentially harmful. The young luminari stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "You should leave. If my father finds you here, he'll dismiss you." "I'll go," Kyle agreed. "But first, are you okay? You seem unwell." "I have soul fracture," she said quietly. "My essence is breaking apart. The healers say there's nothing more they can do." Kyle felt something twist in his chest. He did not fully understand luminary physiology, but he understood dying. "I'm sorry," he said. "Why?" The question seemed genuine, not hostile. "I'm nothing to you." "You're a person who's suffering," Kyle said simply. That's enough. The young luminary tilted her head, studying him with confusion. But you're human. You have no soul. How can you understand suffering? It was not the first time Kale had heard this logic. The luminary truly believed that without souls, humans could not experience real emotions. They thought human tears were just biological responses, human laughter just programmed sounds. They could not imagine that beings without inner light might still feel joy and pain and love and loss. Maybe I don't have what you call a soul, Kale said carefully, but I feel things. I remember things. I remember what it's like to be afraid and alone. The young luminary said nothing. She simply watched him with those luminous eyes. What's your name? Kyle asked. Lyra. She paused. You're not supposed to ask luminari their names. Humans are supposed to wait to be told. I'm sorry, Kale said. I'm Kale. Kale, Lyra repeated slowly, as if testing how the word felt. Why aren't you afraid of me? Most humans stay as far from luminari as possible. Because you're sick, Kale said, and you're alone in this room. I think maybe you're more afraid of me than I should be of you. For the first time, Lyra's light brightened slightly. Just a flicker, but noticeable. It might have been surprise, or maybe something else. I should finish the maintenance check, Kale said. But I'll be quiet. I won't bother you. You can talk, Lyra said softly. If you want. No one else can visit me. Their light is too intense. It makes the fracturing worse, but you... She gestured at him. You have no light. You don't hurt me. So Kale talked while he worked. He told her about Earth's seasons, about snow falling in winter and flowers blooming in spring. He described the ocean, which Lyra had never seen. He told her about his younger sister, who used to collect smooth stones from the river. And Lyra listened, her fractured light steady in the quiet room. When Kale finished his work and prepared to leave, Lyra spoke again. Kale, will you come back tomorrow? He should say no. He should maintain proper distance. But when he looked at her dim, fracturing light, alone in this beautiful prison of a room, he could not refuse. Yes, he said. I'll come back. Kyle returned the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each morning he found reasons to perform maintenance in the East Wing. He checked systems that did not need checking. He calibrated equipment that was already calibrated perfectly. The other human workers noticed, but said nothing. They understood that sometimes, in this lonely existence among the luminari, you found small moments of connection wherever you could. On the fourth day, Kale brought something with him. He had found a smooth stone in the estate gardens, round and gray, worn by water until it fit perfectly in his palm. He set it on the table beside Lyra's rest platform without saying anything about it. Lyra stared at the stone for a long moment. What is this? A gift, Kale said simply. Where I come from. People give gifts to friends who are unwell. It's supposed to help you feel less alone. But it's just a stone, Lyra said, confusion rippling through her dimming light. It has no function, no value. It has the value of someone thinking about you, Kale explained. I saw it and thought you might like how smooth it is, how it feels solid and real. Lyra reached out with her energy form and touched the stone gently. I don't understand humans, she said quietly, but I'll keep it. Thank you. Over the following days, Kale brought other small things. A pressed flower from the garden. Lyra had never seen one up close before. A piece of paper with a drawing of Earth's moon, which Kale sketched from memory. A small carved piece of wood that one of the other human workers had made. Each time, Lyra initially protested that these objects were meaningless. Humans, she had been taught, could not give meaningful gifts because they had no souls to infuse meaning into things. But she kept every item carefully arranged near her rest platform, and sometimes Kale caught her studying them when she thought he was not looking. Their conversations grew longer and deeper. "Tell me about human emotions," Lyra asked one afternoon. Her light had grown dimmer over the past week. The fractures in her essence spread like spider webs through her form. "How can you feel things without a soul?" Kale set down his tools and sat on the floor near her platform, not too close, always respectful of her space. "I don't know how to explain it," he admitted. "I just know that I do feel things. When something good happens, I feel happiness in my chest like warmth spreading. When something sad happens, I feel pain in the same place, like something is breaking. But that's just your physical body responding," Lyra said, repeating what she had been taught. "It's not real feeling. Real emotions come from the soul." "Then tell me this," Kale said gently. "My sister died 5 years ago. She got sick and the medicine we needed was too expensive. I still think about her every day. I still talk to her sometimes, under the stars, even though she's gone. I still miss her so much that sometimes I can barely breathe. If that's not real feeling, then what is it?" His voice cracked on the last words, and Lyra saw moisture in his eyes. Tears, the human biological response to distress. But there was something in his expression, something in the way his face twisted with pain, that did not seem like a simple biological response. "I'm sorry about your sister," Lyra whispered. "What was her name?" "Maya," Kale said, wiping his eyes. "She was 7 years younger than me. She loved to sing." "Do you think—" Lyra hesitated. "Do you think she still exists somewhere? Without a soul, where do humans go when they die?" "I don't know," Kale admitted. "But I hope she's somewhere peaceful, somewhere without pain." They sat in silence for a while. Then Lyra said, "The Covenant teaches that soulless beings simply stop existing when they die, that there's nothing beyond because there was nothing true within. But when you talk about Maya, it seems like she was very real, very true. She was the most real thing in my life," Kyle said softly. The next week brought worse news. The Covenant healers examined Lyra and declared her condition irreversible. Her soul was fragmenting beyond any possibility of repair. They gave her days, perhaps hours. High Arbiter Zeltis, her father, was devastated. He withdrew to his meditation chambers and refused to see anyone. The estate staff began preparing for mourning rituals. Other human workers warned Kyle to stay away from the East Wing now. "They'll blame you if you're near her when she passes," one said. "Humans always get blamed when things go wrong." But Kyle could not stay away. He spent every spare moment with Lyra. When his work shifts ended, he returned to her chamber. He read to her from human books, stories about heroes and adventures and people who overcame impossible odds. He played simple melodies on a flute he had carved from wood. Sometimes he just sat with her in comfortable silence, his presence a steady constant in her fading world. Lyra grew weaker each day. Her light flickered like a candle in a storm. The fractures spread until her entire form seemed ready to shatter into pieces. She slept more often, and when she was awake, she could barely speak above a whisper. On what the healers said would likely be her last day, Lyra woke briefly and found Kale sitting beside her platform. He had not left all night. "Kale," she whispered, "why do you stay? I'm dying. You gain nothing from being here. You risk punishment for spending so much time away from your duties." Kale took her ethereal hand, carefully, gently, surprised as always that he could touch her energy form at all. "Because no one should face the dark alone," he said. "Soul or no soul. I know that much is true. Whatever I am, whatever I have inside me, it tells me that leaving you alone now would be wrong." Lyra's light flickered, and something that might have been tears formed in her eyes, concentrated droplets of light energy. You're kinder than most Luminari I've known, she said. How is that possible? Maybe kindness doesn't require the kind of soul you're looking for, Kale suggested. Maybe it just requires caring about someone other than yourself. Lyra's hand tightened around his. Stay, she whispered. Please stay. I'm not going anywhere, Kyle promised. And he did not move from her side. By dawn, the entire estate knew that a human was maintaining a vigil beside the High Arbiter's dying daughter. The estate manager, a stern luminari named Vorath, arrived at Lyra's chamber with orders for Kale to return to his duties immediately. You are overstepping your bounds, Vorath said, his light pulsing with disapproval. This is not appropriate behavior for a human worker. Kyle looked up from where he sat beside Lyra's platform. She was sleeping now, her breathing shallow, her light barely visible. I'll return to work when she doesn't need me anymore, he said quietly. She is not yours to care for, Vorath insisted. You have responsibilities. The equipment in the South Wing requires maintenance. You are neglecting your duties. Then dismiss me, Kale said, but I'm not leaving her alone. Vorath's light flared with shock. Humans did not speak this way to Luminari supervisors. Humans did not refuse direct orders. But something in Kale's expression, a determination that bordered on desperation, made Vorath pause. He left without another word, though his displeasure radiated through the hallway. The other human workers were worried. You'll lose your position, they told Kale during the brief moments he left Lyra's side. You'll lose your housing, your wages. They might even ban you from Covenant space entirely. I know, Kale said, but I can't leave her. Would you want to die alone? They had no answer for that. In her lucid moments, Lyra began using her remaining strength to do something unusual. She activated a recording device and began documenting everything she observed. Her voice was weak, but her words were clear. Day 17 of terminal decline, she whispered into the recorder. The human Kale remains at my side despite orders to leave. He brought me water this morning, not because I asked, but because he noticed my energy field was dehydrating. He read to me from a book about Earth's forests. His voice is soothing. I find myself wanting to hear more. She paused, gathering strength. The Covenant teaches that humans cannot provide real comfort because they lack souls. But I am comforted. How is this possible? Another day, she recorded, Kyle told me about his mother today. She used to sing him songs when he was afraid of the dark. He sang one of them to me. It was simple, probably nothing compared to Luminari harmonic compositions. But it made me feel safe. How can a soulless being create safety? The recordings continued, each one documenting moments of care that should not have mattered according to everything the Luminari believed. On the 5th day of Kyle's vigil, High Arbiter Zeltis finally emerged from his meditation chambers. His light was dim with grief, but his presence was still commanding. He walked through his estate with heavy purpose, heading toward his daughter's room. When he reached Lyra's chamber, he found Kale sitting on the floor, holding Lyra's hand and telling her a story about fireflies, tiny insects on Earth that glowed in the darkness. You, Zeltis said, his voice sharp with anger. Human, leave this room immediately. Kale stood quickly, releasing Lyra's hand. Yes, High Arbiter, I apologize for... Father, no. Lyra's voice was weak but urgent. Her eyes opened and her dim light focused on Zeltis. Please, let him stay. Zeltis stared at his daughter in disbelief. Lyra, you should be resting. You should not waste energy on a human. He's not a waste, Lyra said, each word requiring effort. He's been here every day. He tells me stories. He holds my hand. He makes the darkness less frightening. Her light pulsed weakly. Father, he's the only light in my darkness. The words struck Zeltis like a physical blow. His daughter, a being of pure radiant soul, was calling a human, a soulless human, her light. It made no sense. It contradicted everything the Covenant taught. But he could not deny what he saw in his daughter's eyes. There was peace there, comfort, something he himself had failed to provide in his grief. "Very well," Zelthus said slowly. "He may stay. For now." Zelthus did not leave, however. He stood in the doorway, watching. He needed to understand what was happening here. He needed to see what this human was doing that brought his dying daughter such comfort. Kyle, uncomfortable under the High Arbiter's scrutiny, sat down again carefully. "Where was I?" he asked Lyra gently. "The fireflies," Lyra whispered. "You were catching them as a child." "Right," Kale said. "So Maya and I would catch them in glass jars, just for a little while to watch them glow. Then we'd let them go again because keeping them felt wrong. They needed to be free to make their light." "Like souls," Lyra murmured, "needing to be free." "Maybe," Kale agreed. "I was only 7. I just thought they were beautiful." Zelthus watched this exchange with growing confusion. The human's tone was gentle, patient. He showed no discomfort with Lyra's deteriorating condition. He did not recoil from her fractured light. He simply sat with her, offering stories and presence. Hours passed. Lyra drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time she woke, her first response was to check if Kyle was still there. Each time, she seemed relieved to find him present. As evening approached, Lyra's condition worsened dramatically. Her light began to fragment in earnest, pieces of her essence starting to separate. The healers had warned this would be the final stage. Once it began, death would follow quickly. Lyra's eyes opened wide with fear. "Kale," she gasped. "I'm scared. I'm so scared." Kale took both her hands, his voice steady despite the tears beginning to form in his eyes. "I'm right here. You're not alone. I promise you're not alone." "It hurts," she whispered. "Everything is breaking apart." "I know," Kyle said, his voice breaking. "I know it hurts. But you're so brave, Lyra. You've been so brave through all of this." Tears began streaming down Kale's face, clear, unmistakable tears of genuine grief. His shoulders shook. His breathing became ragged. He held Lyra's hands and wept openly, without shame, without restraint. "You matter," he told her through his tears. "You matter so much. Knowing you has changed me. You've been kind to me when you didn't have to be. You've treated me like a person when everyone else saw a tool. You matter, Lyra. Please know that you matter." Zelthus stood frozen in the doorway, watching a human cry for his dying daughter with absolute sincerity. The tears were real. The grief was real. The love, and yes, it was love, was real. Everything the Covenant taught said this was impossible. But Zelthus could not deny what he witnessed with his own eyes. Finally, unable to remain silent any longer, Zelthus spoke. His voice was quiet, shaken, confused. "Humans are said to be animals without souls," he said. "So why are you crying for me?" Kyle looked up, tears still streaming down his face. He met the High Arbiter's glowing eyes directly. "Because she's dying," he said simply. "Because she was kind to me when no one else was. Because she laughed at my stories and listened to my songs. Because love doesn't need permission from anyone's definition." He turned back to Lyra, squeezing her hands gently. "Because she's my friend, and I don't want her to go." Zelthus had no response. He simply stood there, his entire understanding of the universe cracking like his daughter's fragmenting soul. The silence in Lyra's chamber was heavy and profound. Kyle continued to hold Lyra's hands, tears falling quietly onto the smooth floor. Zelthus remained in the doorway, his brilliant light dimmed by the weight of what he had just witnessed. Before anyone could speak again, 3 Covenant physicians arrived for Lyra's final examination. They moved past Zelthus with respectful nods, their lights pulsing with professional detachment. This was their duty, to document the final moments of a soul's dissolution. The lead physician, an ancient luminary named Seraph, began scanning Lyra's fragmenting essence with specialized instruments. The readings appeared on holographic displays floating in the air, numbers and patterns that meant nothing to Kale, but clearly troubled the physicians. "Curious," Seraph murmured. "Very curious indeed." "What is it?" Zelthus asked, stepping fully into the room. Seraph gestured to the displays. "The fragmentation rate has decreased significantly. When we examined her 3 days ago, her essence was separating at an exponential rate. She should have dissolved completely by now." He adjusted his instruments, scanning again. "But the fractures have stabilized. They're not healing, but they're no longer spreading." "How is that possible?" another physician asked. Seraph moved closer to Lyra, studying her carefully. Then his gaze shifted to Kale, who still held Lyra's hands. "Human," Seraph said. "Release her for a moment." Kale hesitated, but Lyra squeezed his hands weakly. "It's okay," she whispered. Kale let go and stepped back. Immediately, the displays changed. The fractures in Lyra's essence began spreading again, subtle but measurable. Her light dimmed further. "Now take her hands again," Seraph instructed. Kyle did so, and the displays changed once more. The fragmentation slowed, the light stabilized. It was small but undeniable. The physicians exchanged looks of profound confusion. Seraph spoke slowly, as if testing each word. "Her essence stabilizes in your presence, specifically when you maintain physical contact and emotional engagement with her." "That's impossible," one of the other physicians said. "Humans have no soul energy. They cannot influence luminary essence fields." "And yet the data clearly shows otherwise," Seraph replied. He turned to Zelthus. "High Arbiter, I must propose something that contradicts our fundamental understanding of consciousness and soul energy." "Speak," Zelthus said. "Perhaps souls are not what we have always believed them to be," Seraph said carefully. "We define souls as visible radiant energy, the inner light we all possess. But what if that is merely one expression of consciousness? What if there are other forms, invisible to our perception, that serve the same fundamental purpose?" "You're suggesting humans have souls?" another physician scoffed. "Centuries of study have proven otherwise." "No," Seraph corrected. "I'm suggesting that humans possess something functionally equivalent. Some form of conscious energy that, when expressed through genuine emotional connection and compassionate intent, creates a resonance that affects luminary essence fields." He gestured to Kyle. "This human's presence, his emotional investment in Lyra's well-being, generates a stabilizing influence we cannot measure directly but can observe through its effects." Zelthus felt his entire worldview trembling. If this is true, then everything the Covenant has taught for centuries would require fundamental revision, Seraph finished. "Yes." Kyle, standing quietly beside Lyra, understood little of the technical discussion, but he understood the basic implication. "Are you saying I'm helping her?" he asked. "We believe so," Seraph confirmed. "Your emotional presence appears to create a resonance that helps hold her fragmenting essence together. Not permanently, her condition is still terminal, but you're slowing the process significantly." "Then I'll stay as long as she needs me," Kale said immediately. Zelthus looked at this human, this being he had dismissed as soulless for years, with new eyes. The human had no political agenda. He gained nothing from helping Lyra. He risked his livelihood, his home, his entire future in Covenant space. And he did it simply because someone was suffering, and he could offer comfort. If that was not the expression of a soul, then what was it? "There is an experimental treatment," Seraph said slowly. "We developed it years ago but never implemented it because the patient would need perfect emotional stability during the procedure. The slightest distress causes fatal cascade fragmentation. He looked at Kale. But if this human can maintain the stabilizing effect... What do you need me to do? Kyle asked. Stay with her, Seraph explained. Continuously, for 7 days and nights. Talk to her, hold her hand, maintain the emotional connection. Keep her calm and stable. If you can do that, we can attempt to reinforce her essence structure at the quantum level. It's a small chance, but it's better than certain death. I'll do it, Kale said without hesitation. Then he looked at Zeltis. If you permit it, High Arbiter. Zeltis stood silent for a long moment. He was being asked to place his daughter's life in the hands of a human, a being without a soul, according to everything he had been taught. But he had seen Kale's tears. He had heard his daughter call this human her light in darkness. And now his own physicians were saying that this soulless creature was the only thing keeping his daughter alive. You have my permission, Zeltis said quietly. You are granted unrestricted access to this chamber, full authority to remain with Lyra for as long as necessary. He paused. And Kale, thank you. It was perhaps the first time in Covenant history that a High Arbiter had thanked a human. Over the next 7 days, Kale never left Lyra's side. He slept in brief intervals on the floor beside her platform. Other human workers brought him food, which he ate quickly between conversations with Lyra. The estate staff, both Luminari and human, began checking on them regularly, no longer with suspicion, but with something approaching hope. Kale talked about everything. He told Lyra about Earth's oceans and mountains. He described cities made of glass and steel. He shared memories of his childhood, dreams he had for the future, hopes he had barely admitted to himself. I dream of a galaxy where humans and Luminari are friends, he told her on the 3rd day, where we see each other as equals, where no one asks if you have a soul before deciding if you matter. Tell me more, Lyra whispered, her light slightly brighter than it had been in weeks. Kyle talked about cooperation between species, about what humans could learn from Luminari wisdom and what Luminari could learn from human resilience, about building something new together, something neither species could create alone. The physicians worked around him, implementing their experimental treatment in carefully measured stages. But they noticed that their success correlated directly with Kale's engagement. When he was actively talking with Lyra, holding her hand, making her laugh with funny stories, the treatment worked better. When he grew tired and his attention wavered, the progress slowed. On the 7th day, Seraph performed the final scan. His light pulsed with barely contained excitement. High Arbiter, he called. Please come see this. Zeltis, who had spent much of the week observing from various corners of the chamber, approached quickly. The fragmentation has stopped, Seraph announced. Not just stabilized, stopped completely. The essence structure is reinforcing itself. She's healing. Healing, Zeltis repeated. That's impossible. You said her condition was irreversible. I was wrong, Seraph admitted freely. We were all wrong. The emotional resonance from a being capable of genuine compassionate care, regardless of whether we can perceive their soul energy, creates a measurable therapeutic effect. He looked at Kale with something approaching reverence. This human saved her life. Lyra stirred on her platform, her light noticeably brighter. Kale? She murmured. I'm here, Kale said, taking her hand. He was exhausted, barely able to stand, but his smile was genuine. You're going to be okay. Because of you, Lyra said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Father, did you see? Kyle has what we cannot see, but I felt it every moment he was here. Her light pulsed with certainty. We've been wrong. We've been so terribly wrong. 3 weeks after Lyra's recovery, High Arbiter Zeltis stood before the Covenant Council. The chamber was vast, filled with hundreds of luminari whose combined light could have illuminated an entire planet. These were the leaders of galactic civilization, beings who had shaped policy and philosophy for thousands of years. Zeltis had prepared for this moment carefully. He brought medical records, scientific data, and Lyra's personal recordings, but most importantly, he brought his own testimony. "Honored Council," he began, his light steady despite his nervousness. "I come before you to challenge a fundamental assumption of our civilization. I propose that humans possess something we have failed to recognize, not because it does not exist, but because we have been measuring the wrong thing." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several council members' lights flickered with disapproval. "For centuries, we have defined soul as visible radiant energy," Zeltis continued. "By this definition, humans have no souls. But I have witnessed something that contradicts this conclusion. I have seen a human display compassion, sacrifice, and love in ways that saved my daughter's life. If these are not expressions of soul, then our definition is incomplete." He activated the holographic displays, showing the medical data from Lyra's recovery. The numbers were undeniable. Then he played portions of Lyra's recordings, her weak voice describing Kale's care, her observations about human emotion, her growing realization that something profound existed in this soulless being. "A human maintained a vigil for 7 days and nights," Zeltis said. "He risked his employment, his home, his entire future. He gained nothing except the knowledge that someone would not die alone. He cried genuine tears for someone not of his species. He loved my daughter without expectation of reward." The council chamber was silent now, all lights focused on Zeltis. "If this is not soul," Zeltis asked, "then what is it? And if we cannot recognize it because it looks different from our own, does that make us wise, or does it make us blind?" The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members argued that one case proved nothing. Others insisted that centuries of doctrine could not be overturned by emotion. But others, particularly those who had worked closely with humans, began sharing their own observations. "I have seen humans mourn their dead with genuine grief," one council member said. "I have seen them celebrate births with pure joy. I have seen them sacrifice their own comfort for strangers. At what point do we admit that what we're observing is real?" The council did not reach immediate consensus. Change, Zeltis knew, would take time. But something had shifted. Questions were being asked that had never been asked before. Meanwhile, on Zeltis's estate, other changes were already happening. Kale had been granted permanent residence in the main estate building, no longer relegated to the worker quarters. Other humans on the staff noticed this and began to hope. Luminari staff, who had witnessed Kale's dedication to Lyra, started having real conversations with their human colleagues for the first time. One afternoon, a Luminari groundskeeper named Ven approached Kyle in the garden. "I have worked alongside humans for 15 years, Ven said quietly. "I never once asked any of them about their lives, their families, their dreams." His light pulsed with something that looked like shame. "I thought you were just workers, just tools that happened to speak." "And now?" Kyle asked gently. "Now I wonder how many stories I missed," Ven said. "How many people I never really saw." It was happening across the estate. Luminari, who had never acknowledged human workers, were suddenly curious. They asked questions. They listened to answers. They began to see individuals instead of categories. Lyra, growing stronger each day, had become passionate about reform. She spent hours composing arguments, collecting testimonies, and building cases for changing covenant law. Her near-death experience had given her a clarity of purpose she had never possessed before. "Father," she said one evening as they walked through the estate gardens, "we cannot let this end with just our family. Every human in Covenant space deserves dignity, deserves recognition. I agree, Zeltis said, but change of this magnitude will take years, perhaps decades. Then we start now, Lyra insisted. We start here, with the humans on our estate. We pay them fairly. We treat them as equals. We show other Luminari that it's possible. Zeltis looked at his daughter, her light fully restored, her essence whole and strong. When did you become so wise? He asked. When a human taught me that kindness doesn't require permission, Lyra replied. 6 months after Lyra's recovery, the Covenant Council issued its first official policy change. Humans would be reclassified from hollow vessels to beings of unclear essence nature. It was not full recognition, not yet, but it was a beginning. It meant humans could no longer be dismissed as simple workers. It opened pathways to citizenship, to legal protections, to dignity under Covenant law. Kyle stood in the estate gardens when he heard the news. Other human workers gathered around him, some crying, some laughing, all of them daring to hope for the first time in years. You did this, one of them said to Kale. You changed everything. No, Kale said quietly. Lyra changed everything. I just refused to let her face the darkness alone. That evening, Lyra found Kale sitting under the estate's great tree, looking up at the stars. She approached carefully, her light gentle in the gathering dusk. May I join you? She asked. Always, Kale said. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lyra spoke. The council asked me to serve as an ambassador, to help bridge the gap between Luminary and humans. They want me to travel to other estates, other worlds, and share what I learned. That's wonderful, Kale said genuinely. You'll be amazing at it. I want you to come with me, Lyra said, as my advisor, my friend. My proof that connection is possible across species. Kale looked at her in surprise. Me? I'm just a maintenance worker. You're the person who taught me that souls aren't about light, Lyra corrected. They're about what you do with what you have, how you treat others, whether you show up when someone needs you. Her light pulsed warmly. You have more soul than anyone I've ever known. Kale smiled, tears forming in his eyes again, but happy tears this time. I'd be honored. What will you tell other humans? Lyra asked. When they ask how you want to spend your freedom? Kale thought about it for a moment, looking up at the stars that connected countless worlds. I'll tell them I want to help build a galaxy where no one has to prove they have a soul before their tears matter. Where compassion is recognized regardless of how it's expressed. Where different kinds of light can shine together. Lyra's glow brightened, agreement, joy, and hope mingling in her radiance. That's a beautiful dream. Then let's make it real, Kyle said. Above them, the stars gleamed, ancient light from distant places, each source different but all contributing to the beauty of the night sky. And below, two beings from different species, once separated by definitions and doctrines, sat together as friends. The change would not be easy. The journey would be long. Prejudices that had existed for centuries would not disappear overnight. But something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy. A question had been asked that could not be unasked. If compassion looks different than expected, does that make it less real? And slowly, one conversation at a time, one connection at a time, one opened heart at a time, the answer was becoming clear. The galaxy was learning to see new kinds of light. Years later, in Covenant records, historians would mark this as the beginning of the Great Recognition, the period when humanity was finally acknowledged as equal citizens of the galactic community. They would study the medical data, the policy changes, the social transformations. But those who were there, who witnessed the actual moment of change, knew the truth. It began with one human who refused to let someone suffer alone. It began with one Luminari, who asked why a supposedly soulless being was crying for her. It began with the simple revolutionary idea that love needs no permission to exist. And once that idea took root, nothing in the galaxy could stop it from growing.